I can show you the world, shining, shimmering, splendid. Tell me, princess, now when did you last let your heart decide? What's up, everybody? Welcome back to another episode of Standing Out, a podcast about sales, marketing, and leadership. You might be asking yourself, what the heck was that? Well, last night, my daughter and I were watching Aladdin, and we watched both. We watched the original, the 90s version, which is the best version. I'm just going to say that right now. And we watched the new live action version. So that song is stuck in my head. Plus, on today's show, we got a little bit of a Disney theme. So I figured, you know what? Let's go for it. So thanks again for showing up today and listening to the show. First of all, I want to give a shout out to our sponsor over at SPI Logistics. Listen, if you are a freight broker or a freight agent, not happy with where you're at, and you just want to stay in your sweet spot, give these guys a look. They've got the technology, the systems, the back office support to help you succeed. Check them out by going to success.spi3pl.com. Again, that's success.spi3pl.com. And let them know you heard about it right here on Standing Out. Great guys over there. Also, just to let you know, we are always on Reads Across America Radio on Tuesday nights on their Trucking Tuesdays lineup. So make sure you check that out as well. Reads Across America, phenomenal organization. Can't wait to talk more about them on the show today. And with that being said, it is time to introduce our guest. And as I told you, there's a little bit of a Disney theme here with it. Everybody give it up for my good friend, the founder and CEO of GLCS, Nate Johnson in the house. I mean,
Hakuna Matata, brother. Yeah. I was gonna come out and finish off a whole new world for you. So, but I forgot we had a Hakuna. Yeah.
We'll have to.
I can open your eyes, brother. So I can open your eyes. So
that'll be a karaoke moment for us. The next broker carrier.
Yeah.
Make that happen. How you doing, my friend?
I'm doing well. So it's good to see you.
I know a lot of people know you, but just give a little introduction for the few folks that might not know who Nate Johnson is.
Sure. Nate Johnson, I'm the founder and CEO of GLCS. Been in transportation and logistics a long time. So coming up on 30 years. Owned trucking companies, managed trucking companies, and went to the technology side probably about 14 years ago now, and started GLCS in 2016. GLCS is a managed service provider first, but so we really help companies with their technology. We help them select technology, deploy technology, support technology, integrate technology to other solutions, and really just ensure that they're safe with their selection and with their deployment and with their continued service of their vendors. Technology is hard, as we've seen here recently with so many events over the last month or two. Unprecedented is now becoming precedented, I think, in the world. So
that word's probably getting overused just a little bit, but no, I think you're right.
Maybe.
I'm seeing a shift definitely to outsourcing some of these services where a company can really get the best of the technical expertise that you guys have, your experience in your past with Trimble, with other providers, with working in the space for so long. They get all of that with your team and a service that's really, really helpful and something that they can kind of be a little bit more hands-off, a little less risk in that regard. And people are moving a little bit more to custom technology because as we see all these technology products come out, they all solve one little bitty problem, but a lot of times they don't talk to each other. They're not built with your company's specific workflows in mind, like all that kind of stuff. So it's becoming, I think, a trend that we're starting to see become more popular and more cost effective than it was maybe 10, 15 years ago.
Right. Absolutely. It's, just the ability to work from outside space, so remotely. So many companies have remote roles, and working with companies to augment those remote roles or just simply enhance your current staff with those remote roles, it's seamless. And 20 years ago, we didn't have that opportunity, so that's a thing. Certainly, subject matter experts. You don't need to employ full-time subject matter experts in your organization. And we have full-time subject matter experts, so fractional deployment of them out there. I mean, it's certainly a thing. And then the white glove service, we saw this recently with CrowdStrike and the outage and what it took to come back up. And I'm going to be talking about that a lot here this week. I know, there's a bit of a delay on this, but it's that'll be taught. This event will be talked about over the next months to come, and the event that how companies come back up on it. And the white glove side, not only how your solutions are engineered and how well they came back up. You were lucky if you weren't hit by it. There's no other way to discuss it. But if you were hit by it, how well did your solution come back up? How well? What's your disaster plan? How well did your organization bounce back from being down? And services like ours can really bring that up. We work with about 300 companies on a daily basis, and once CrowdStrike launched the patch, all 300 of our companies that we work with were up and running within 2 to 3 hours. So
yeah, it was a pretty perilous situation. I was talking to some of my friends here in St. Louis who own a trucking company who were impacted by that. Their entire dispatch TMS platform went down, and they were really without anything for several hours. And it might have been a little longer than that, but it was something where Friday night was no longer movie night. It was now, how do we get this thing back up and running night?
Right.
The perils of being an entrepreneur as time works out. All right, so Nate, we're going to talk about leadership today, but before we do that, I got a little fun fact about you. I didn't know this about you. This is something new I've learned, that you've done a lot of high adventure camping.
Right.
Tell me about that.
Maybe not as much recently, but earlier in my life, that was something that I did a lot of. So lots of backpacking, a few trips on sailboats. Now I kind of replace that with off-roading, and we do have some overlanding ideals in design. But a lot of this stems from my time in Boy Scouts, and we spent and it eventually graduated into adulthood as well. But as a Boy Scout, we would always do some crazy high adventure things, and as an adult, where I had a child in Scouts as well, he was able to do similar things. But I realized how unique we were in scouting. Not every Boy Scout gets to do this. Actually, most Boy Scouts don't get to do this. I've hiked Isle Royal, I think 4 times, maybe 5 times. Isle Royal is a 50-mile island in the middle of Lake Superior. It's 3.5 miles wide, and its widest point. Hike that. You have to get to it via a boat. I think there's some helicopter trips out there, but that's only for people that can afford that. So it's about 30 miles off of Grand Marais, if I recall. And then there's a way to get to it from Michigan as well. But hiked that a bunch of times. Boundary Waters, Glacier National Park.
Beautiful.
New Mexico, Philmont, New Mexico. I've sailed from Key Largo to Key West and back. We've Porcupine Mountains, kind of you name it, on various other smaller excursions. And some of these you just throw a bunch of freeze-dried food in the backpack and you head out for 2 weeks. So filter your water and make it all go. So
that's awesome. I can't say I've done a lot of the high adventure stuff. We did a little RV camping for several years, which we loved. But when I lived in Portland, we did a lot of hiking around Mount Hood out there near Portland. Yep. And that's just beautiful up there. Just, that whole area is just absolutely tremendous. So that's pretty cool. Yeah, it's neat that you got a chance to do all that stuff. Those are memories and images in your mind that you just can't ever get rid of. They're absolutely tremendous.
So Mount Hood, did you go to Artist Point while you were out there?
I did not go to Artist Point, but I've heard of other people that went there. We did a lot of hiking around the waterfalls, which is beautiful.
Sure.
I love
beautiful.
It's fun being at the top of a waterfall as opposed to the bottom of it. It's pretty interesting to see water rushing over, and just different views, different perspectives like that, which is pretty cool. All right, Nate, let's talk a little bit about leadership, my friend. I consider you as one of the great leaders in our industry. And I've got a quote. We've had a lot of presidential stuff going on. Well, let me give you all the compliments today.
Fair enough.
We got a lot of presidential stuff going on right now. So I actually found a quote from a long ago president, from John Quincy Adams. It says, "If your actions inspire others to dream more, learn more, do more, and become more, you are a leader." And I kind of like that. It's kind of a fun quote to go with. But I wanted to ask you this question right out of the gate. How do you really define and kind of think of and characterize leadership? What does that mean to you?
I think it's about inspiration, inspiring others, those that want to work with you, those that want to follow where you go. That has a lot to do with leadership. Communication, I think, is a large key to it as well. If you're an effective communicator, then that's a great descriptor of an effective leader. If you can't communicate well, you can't lead. But when you look back into history, those who inspire are great leaders as well. So that's at its core. I think the fundamentals of leadership: be inspirational and be effective at communication. And I mean, it's hard to be inspirational without being an effective communicator.
Yeah, a lot of those things do go hand in hand. The old adage is, if you wonder if you're a leader, turn around and see if anyone's following you. See if anybody's actually following what you're doing. I think it's a great kind of picture of that. What are some things that leaders have done in your career that really made them stand out, or maybe some leaders that just really stood out to you? What was it about them that made them stand out?
Well, I think when it comes down to it, and I talk a little bit, from a leadership perspective, you have several different types of leaders throughout your lifetime that you kind of consider. And some of these leaders are more grassroots. They're more of a mentorship role to you. And some are very senior and people that you've looked up to in more inspirational roles. So, certainly learning from those mentors that you've had throughout your life. And I recently had a discussion with someone about mentors, and whether you are a mentor or not is not something that you get to define. And when you're speaking to someone and you consider them a mentor, you may not consider them a mentor for 10 or 20 years until you reflect back at them in your life. And that's certainly the case with me when I look back at the people who I consider mentors in my career. It was probably not until 10 years ago that I considered them foundational mentors within my career. Certainly I learned something from them at that point in my career, but now I look back at them and said, there are significant points that I learned, skills from them that I have taken throughout my career, from there on out. And so therefore, you look at that, on who sort of brings you forward and who you listen to. And, so that's one thing. Learning the fundamentals of what it takes to be a good business person, a good person in general. Lots of times those are similar things. I just talked about this yesterday. So a friend of ours wrote a message on LinkedIn, and I responded that integrity in all things. So to me, it's hard to be an effective leader if you don't have integrity. And some of these fundamentals just can't come together for me if you don't live by certain values. And integrity to me is one of those extreme core values as well. So.
Yeah, I think those are great words to think about: mentorship, leadership, great communication, being able to cast vision, all that kind of goes into it to do that. It surprises me that mentorship is not as big of a focus, especially in companies and organizations, that there's not a real push for mentorship. And I don't know if it's just a matter of time or resources, or if it just gets overlooked or whatever. But, when we're growing up, we have coaches our whole childhood that help us get better at what we do. And it seems like when we get to adulthood, that falls to the wayside. Have you seen that? Do you see that? Do you agree with that? Or do you feel like companies do this really well? Like, what are your thoughts on that?
I think there's an evolution that has happened that has gone poorly over the last 10 to 20 years, 10 to 15 years, and I'm not sure why. And this is something that I think has become evident to me in certainly over COVID. You start looking at what does it take to develop. It's become evident to me as we've become more remote. So how do you develop people as a remote organization? How do you develop them to become the leaders of tomorrow when you're not having the water cooler discussions, when you're not walking past them, when you don't have the capability of being the mentor like you used to be, or that guide that you used to be? Because once again, you don't get to dictate that you're their mentor, but you do get to say, hey, I'm going to help you. I'm going to put forth my time and investment that time into you on a day-to-day basis. But doing that remotely is much more difficult than what it ever was before. And if you're not in an office, you're not on that constant mind of, oh, there's Sarah as you walk past Sarah, and I'm going to stop in and check on Sarah today, because you're not walking past Sarah. And so out of sight, out of mind, and it's just not that thought. So, I think we've slowly degraded away from that, and it's become not a modus operandi of the office, because the office is no longer established that way. And so that is a concern of mine. And how do you develop that moving forward? And it's some tactic, and I don't have that answer yet on how do you beat that? How do you continue to double down and invest in your team to make it better, and without creating this set of digital interactions, KPIs, whatever, that people are trying to hit targets on, that is just another roadmap, similar to what it is today. So, but I do agree with you. We've sort of moved away from this coaching scenario to this metric-driven society. And those metrics need to be there because metrics equal results. But instead of coaching us through it, we're now driving through it. We're now creating a path that says, hey, you have to go down this road. We have a scenario going on like that right now. Here's some metrics that we need to go down. And the initial response is, well, the initial response was maybe not the best response back from the team. But the reality of it is let's have discussions about how to achieve these results, not this is the metrics, go hit them. And I think a lot of companies today are just playing out, here's what you need to hit, go hit it. If you can't hit it, goodbye, or whatever the case may be. And instead of let's work together as a team to achieve results. So
yeah, that's a really interesting thought, Nate, because when I think of remote organizations, like we're a remote organization, I know your organization has a lot of remote employees as well. When I think about that, I think of the loss of culture, that it's hard to really capture and build culture remotely. But I didn't think about the idea of those mentorship moments of like going to lunch together, or going on a sales call together, or just stopping, by someone's desk and asking how they're doing, or having those times. I think it takes a lot more intentionality now to get that done. And you're not catching things. It's almost like trying to parent without living with your kids anymore. Like how would you do that? That'd be really, really difficult.
Right. Very hard. And I actually, so sales calls, you have the opportunity to meet at conferences. You have these awesome opportunities to develop even more relationships because you're doubling down on those. Being a remote group, you're bringing people now to events that you maybe wouldn't have brought them to before. And that doubles down to a certain point. We're selective on who we bring to events now, and we bring people that we normally wouldn't, in the past at least. So we may bring people to learn, but I equate it to as the daily interaction in an office that is the largest loss. So, I mean, the lunches, the water cooler talk, I'm walking past and just want to say something. And that 15 minutes to an hour of discussion across the entire group of people, the awareness that you are in the office as a leader in your organization, the fact that they can overhear you speaking to other people in discussions and hear how you interact in those things. And they learn from that. People learn from that, and they see your behavior and your mannerisms. That's lost. You no longer get to operate that way. And
yeah, a lot of the leadership that's caught is
right.
missed. Yeah. That is a problem. I'm not sure what the answer is either, except a massive intentional effort to spend more time. I know something that our team does is they just jump on calls and they work together for a while. You know, they're not the
We
call
have a
doesn't
lot of
really
people
have,
that do that too.
yeah, it doesn't have a purpose to it, but it kind of gives that feel that we're sitting in the same room and working together. And you get a little bit of that, but it's just different. You know, it's definitely different than what's
And
been
that's
said.
more team building than it is and team building is great too. That's wonderful. And you definitely want that relationship building side. But on the leadership and on that development side, that's still, you question that too. So, because
Yeah.
what you don't end up wanting is the leader to then become so ingrained in the team that they're not the leader. So, and that can happen too when you end up on the phone for the whole time, and it can cross lines there too. So
Yeah, it's just different. I don't know the answer, but I think that culture, leadership, and management from a remote standpoint is going to be a big push in the next 5 to 10 years on training. Like, how do you train mid managers to manage remotely when they've never done it before? I think those are all challenges that remote work is bringing into it, and leadership is certainly one of those. Now, Nate, you're known as the mayor, my friend. Is that a self-given title, or did
it was
somebody just start
not.
calling you that? Tell me this
It was
story,
not.
man.
So it's not a flashy story. I've been told to create some fictional
You need to flash it up.
story about aliens kidnapping me, but no, we were just hanging out at a conference, and a couple other CEOs were around, and our director of sales was around, and they're like, "Yeah, Nate's the mayor," and the other two CEOs were like, "Yeah, that's fitting." And then I show up at a podcast like 2 weeks later, and they're like, "So you're the mayor?" And I'm like, "How did that happen?" So, and
Like,
then
here we
and
are.
it just started picking up, and a couple people were pushing it, and then maybe after 3-4 months, I threw it on social media because it was happening enough, and said, we'll let it stick." So,
It's definitely fitting. There's not a lot of people in the industry that don't know you and don't see you as somebody working to help everybody out. I think that's what I loved about you the first time I met you, is this willingness to help people out and to give of your time and resources to help people move along. And I think that's a very fitting title for you to have. So keep it going, and definitely come up with a more riveting story about my high school, or I'm sorry, my college history professor had a great way of telling stories, and he broke his leg once, and he came in and he made up this story, and we were all on the edge of our seats. It was so good. And then he finally let the cat out of the bag that he had just slipped on his stairs at home. So good stories are pretty captivating. You'll have to come up with a good one for that. You have you got a podcast of your own that some people may not know
correct.
about, but they should. And if they haven't subscribed to it yet, make sure you do that. Driving Forward is the GLCS podcast that Nate hosts, along with several members of the GLCS team and other guests from the industry as well. What led you to start that podcast? And also, while you're answering that, you're a part of the Reads Across America Trucking Tuesday lineup
Correct.
as well,
Yeah,
which is
I'll be
exciting.
on
We love sharing
twice
that
this
spot
day.
with you. I know.
I'll be on twice
love it.
this day. There'll be
People
a
will be like,
delay
he's on
now,
again.
so. Yeah. What the
So
heck?
yeah, it's going to be great. So talk about starting your podcast and being a part of Reads Across America.
Well, first off, it's always nice to come on as a guest, and you get to talk about yourself a little bit instead of talk to other people about what they're up to. So I appreciate that. I started Driving Forward largely. I used to do a lot of public speaking, and I did a event, which is actually coming up here next week, many years ago, and I stood up in front of a group of people and I bombed. This is several years ago, but it was actually at the Minnesota Trucking, or at least my opinion was I bombed. And I'm sure if you ask anyone there, they don't remember it, because very often when you fail, people don't remember when you fail. So it's all on you, right? But I felt like I did a very poor speaking engagement at that event. And I said after that, I'm not doing that again. I need to fix this, because at one time I used to do a lot of public speaking. And I'm not going to say I'm a riveting public speaker, but I certainly wouldn't stumble across any sort of public setting. and I used to perform, and I used to, do all of that. So I certainly shouldn't have a problem in front of large audiences. And so over time, people started talking to me about doing a podcast and talking about industry items. And so Driving Forward was kind of invented a little over a year ago. We started kind of tampering with it in May of 2023. And there's a little bit of content that's sprinkled out there. And in November of 2023 is when we launched it. And it originally was just all things transportation. We were talking anything and everything. You inspired a lot of it too. So in being aware of kind of what you guys did, and that originally, yeah, there you go. But a lot of the content that you guys had put out, I took a lot of pieces of that, and it's evolved into its own item now. So it's now largely talking to business leaders and business leaders only on the asset non-asset side of the industry, or in very specific. We've scaled back a lot on the technology solutions that support them. So we're talking to a lot of trucking companies, a lot of brokerages, a lot of occasional truck drivers as well. Right now we're doing a lot of companies in Minnesota because we're supporting the Minnesota Trucking Association. We're doing a lot with Nothing Without Trucking, the ATA, the drivers that are going to the National Truck Driving Championship. So just supporting in general the industry on that side, in that niche. And it's, as you do these interviews, you start to learn what's the easiest interview to do, and you realize, hey, these subjects are what's best, and you find out your viewers like them too. So we've grown from 100 people watching it a week to 1,000 people watching it a week, and across most platforms. And sometimes we don't get that, but for the most part, we get around that.
Now, kudos to you on that. And what do you hope that your audience gets out of the show? Like, what do you want them to take away from an episode?
Just education. The idea of some nugget that they didn't have prior to that discussion. So when you're speaking to a trucking company owner, is there something that trucking company owner knows that you can take away that makes your life better? Whether it's an operational piece of information, whether it's, hey, I'm struggling with business today too. Maybe it's a sales tactic, maybe, something along those lines. But just take a piece of information every week that you can come out of it with that says, I can use this to better my business or my day. Same thing with the drivers. We had a great discussion last week with Calhoun Truck Lines, and Wayne Anderson, who won the Minnesota Truck Driving Championship on the tank division, who's a driver for Wayne or for Calhoun Truck Lines, was also on with Brent Boyce, who's the owner. Wayne had mentioned all kinds of tactics around driving safely, and if there's a few drivers that are on that said, hey, that does something, well, if by chance a driver listens to that, changes their behavior, and somehow avoids an accident, man, that's awesome. That's like the best outcome that we could ever have is having an impact to safety. So
yeah, that's huge. And National Truck Driver Championship sounds like the Top Gun of truck driving, which sounds awesome. Where is that going to be this year? When is that?
That's going to be in Indianapolis. I believe it's August 21st. The week of August 21st. I may have my dates wrong.
In Indy, they should have those trucks racing around the track, racing around the speedway, man. That could be a competition as well. How fast can you get a truck around the speedway?
Yeah, that might be counterproductive to what they're trying to do. But
it might be counterproductive, but it would be entertaining. I'll tell you.
It would be entertaining.
Yeah. There's got to be rules to it. They can't have any. There's probably some lanes maybe or something got to stay in. Like it could be somewhat entertaining to have it on the track, but that's pretty cool.
Yeah, so there's actually another podcast coming out here soon too, which is another freight podcast, which is, I don't know, you and I haven't talked about freight movement at all much, but that's a local event group that we've been launching that's had some success and a lot of great feedback. We can't get it out fast enough. It takes a lot of effort to do that, largely on the leadership side, largely on the networking side. If we have one in your guys' area, it'd be great to have you out. But another freight podcast is
these
coming
are
out to
groups,
support
right?
that.
These are networking groups, right?
Networking groups, they're not really groups. Anybody can come. They're in cities. So we've primarily done Minneapolis. We're looking at Chicago, Cleveland, Dallas, Atlanta, Phoenix as next ones, but there's only so many of us at this point, and we're still working out the models. And if anyone wants to sponsor a event in their area, we're happy to put one together. But lots of discussion around them, and the last one that we had a little over 50 people, and it was all transportation logistics people in the Minneapolis area, which largely doesn't have events. So we've had 2 of them here. Both have been quite successful. They grow a little bit each time, but the tactic behind them is whatever you want them to be. But largely just to get together and network, and there'll be some interesting discussions coming out on that. The idea behind it for us is to just get together. It's not really a thing that we're looking to make money on. We want to network, and we want to network without having to travel to Kingdom Come and spend $3,000 per person plus hotel and blah, 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 blah. So we want to give other companies the opportunity.
Where would someone go to learn more about and/or potentially, request to have, one of these networking events?
Right now it's on LinkedIn, Freight Movement FR8 MVMT. And very shortly here, we'll have our website up and running. So like I said, everything's a bit delayed on that one. So
no, that's awesome. I'm looking forward to that. When you get one in St. Louis, I'll definitely go to that. I go to a lot of the Transportation Club events here as well, and they're always good networking events. There's a good group here that would probably show up for that. That's for sure. We're gonna have a little fun. We got a question from some of the people over at Freight Movement, some of your team members that you may not know about this, but they said if Nate could only communicate using movie quotes, which movie would he choose the quotes from? Do you have some movies that have some quotable lines?
Oh, I think. That's a good one. I think I think I know who asked that question. So I'd probably, just because of the diversity of it and the one that pops into mind is Home Alone.
Home Alone.
So, okay. And primarily just because of all the one-liners and the fact that I guess we watch it once a year, and I probably know, but when he's running everybody through the obstacle course of the house, he's always got the one-liners in there and whatnot. So
yeah, that's a good. We watch that one more than once a year. Man, you only watch it once a year. My kids, we watch that several times a year.
Yeah, well, I probably get to it once a year. So, but on Christmas
that one,
sure,
I'm thinking of like Dumb and Dumber has a lot of quotable quotes.
That's
has a bunch. Friday has a bunch of good ones. There's a lot of them.
Nacho Libre. I haven't watched that one in forever.
Oh man, Nacho Libre is a gem. Oh my goodness, it's so good. I'm fortunate that my kids love that one. We haven't showed them Dumb and Dumber yet. I don't know why. Maybe we need to do that, but they're big fans of Nacho Libre. So we quote a lot of movies around our house a lot. So
yeah, fair enough.
That would be pretty fun if we had to communicate only in quotes. All right, well, Nate, what is up next for GLCS? Are you going to be working on some expansion of services, or what are you guys doing next?
Yeah, right now we're really growing our managed service offering, which is we've always offered various managed services. That's primarily IT managed services and something called application managed services, and so we've doubled down on that, and we're adding on quite a few customers on a monthly basis there. Actually, right now we've got a few partnerships coming up on the services side as well. So lots of interesting, fun things happening on that side of the business. We are next week we're at the Minnesota Trucking Association annual conference. So excited about that. Golfing on Tuesday. So at Cragen's in Brainerd, Minnesota, at the Troy Lehman course. At the Troy Lehman.
I thought you were going to say Hazeltine, but that sounds like a good one too. I've been there.
This is. I don't know if it's equal to, but it's. You have golf the Troy Lehman course already?
Yes,
So that's right,
a nice
right
spot,
by my
dude.
cabin. It's right by my cabin. I have yet to golf it yet, though. So last year
It's
I
a
was supposed
beautiful
to, and they
course.
put us on a different course.
Yeah, I played it, I think,
So
3 summers ago. It was really nice.
okay, right when it opened. So
Yeah.
then. But we'll be there. We've got a crew of people. We're sponsoring the Tuesday evening cocktail hour, so please swing by and see us if you're around. And then we'll be at Trimble Insight in September as well. And
September in
we're
Vegas.
figuring out our end of year season. So we had one heck of a beginning of the year. I think we did 14 or 16 conferences through June. Took a little bit of a hiatus. Only did 1 or 2 here, 2 in July, and none in August. Thank goodness, none in August. And but we'll be ramping up. I know we haven't locked in on Broker Carrier Summit, but I know we'll be at Broker Carrier Summit. So
nice. We'll look forward to seeing you out there on the road, my friend. And thank you so much for being on the show today. Always good to have you on to talk a little bit leadership. And have a great rest of your summer. Enjoy August at home.
That is the plan. Appreciate it. It's good to see you, man.
We'll talk soon. And everybody, don't forget, we got a lot of episodes coming up, so make sure you check us out every Tuesday for a new episode with guests just like Nate. And we got a couple of things coming up, a couple of events. If you're not familiar with this, next week is the Bid Freighter 2nd Annual Golf Tournament. We are sponsoring that. One of the whole sponsors there. We're happy about that. And we're going to be playing as well. But it's to raise money for ALS. So if you go to bitfreightergolf.com, you can make a donation to ALS. We'd appreciate that. And also, it's not too early to sign up for the Broker Carrier Summit, October 23 through 25. You can go to brokercarriersummit.com today and register for that event. And with that said, thanks so much for watching today. Thank you to our sponsors, to SPI Logistics. And next week on the show, we got Brad Perling of BitFreighter to talk about that golf tournament. So super excited about that coming up. So make sure you make a donation. Go to bitfreightergolf.com. And remember, folks, stop standing still, start standing out. We'll see you next time.